CitizenCon 2954 has just finished, and I have things to say. Things that required making a whole YouTube channel and yakking about it on the internet, apparently. So if you found this here, well done. Go and see if someone's written first in the comments on the first video of a shiny new channel yet. There was a lot of awesome stuff shown off at CitizenCon, honestly. But I'm not going to start there, because I think we're staring at a potential game-breaking problem, and I want to laser focus on just that issue right now. It's this that I think needs more airtime and discussion, and that has caused the creation of this channel. Right now, even though we have full persistence, anything we leave behind in the universe is basically just rubbish. What do you normally see as you wander around the verse? Mostly it's empty drink bottles and discarded medical gowns. Oh, and there's also dead bodies and broken ships. Most of it is never returned to at all. And a tiny amount only once to pick up something from our own corpse that we didn't want to leave behind. When we start leaving actual useful things in the verse, things we want to visit multiple times, that's when we'll really start to feel this issue. If you've built a little cabin in the woods, you must log into the same shard every time reliably for it to still be there. If you want to park your ship outside that log cabin, go inside, log out in the bed you put there. It really has to still be there when you log back in. Otherwise, when you log back in, you're alone in the woods? Even if you were relocated to a city, what of all the stuff you left there? Your gear, resources, vehicles, ships? Where will all that stuff be? It doesn't matter why you shifted shard. If yours was full, if you partied up with someone and their shard was different to yours, or any other reason, any spawning, even temporarily, in a different shard for any reason, is not part of the permanent user-built bases experience that anyone wants. For the universe to make sense, you have to exist within one shard the entire time. That means your shard must never become full, and the people you want to play with all need to be on the same shard all the time. And the number of shards can never be decreased, because once one has existed, people will have built stuff in that shard, and that stuff must be preserved. So what we're looking at here is server provision cannot be scaled with demand by adding and removing shards. Once you've taken the decision to add a new shard, there'll be stuff in it people want, and it can never be removed. But bases aren't just personal houses. They can be owned by an organisation. That dramatically increases the circle of friends you need to share a shard with. Now, it's not just you and a few close friends, but your entire org. Otherwise, working together to build and operate that base isn't gonna work. And you can be in multiple orgs too. Apparently simultaneously, as well as the more conventional serial system by joining and leaving them over time. Lots of orgs already exist, including some very large ones.
Yeah, so Death Squadron, we're the largest gaming org in Star Citizen. We've only got like 3,000 people. I think we just checked it the other day. We're just hitting over 23,100.
This rapidly becomes a very dense network which cannot be cleanly separated into many shards without cutting people off from friends or orgs. If there's not a one-to-one correlation between shards and regions at the launch of 1.0, this is going to descend rapidly into a massive shit show. Instead of one big org base for your org, there's going to be loads of little ones for each shard. And depending on how many members an org has per shard, some of those bases will fare better than others. Over time, there will be slow movement of people, either abandoning their homesteads to move to shards where their org is doing better, or abandoning their org to move to another org who has more facilities in their shard. Slowly, over time, each shard will become dominated by a single org. The mechanics of a many-sharded universe with permanent structures conveying advantages are truly awful. The core issue here is the capacity of the hybrid, also known as the replication layer. As of the last meshing test, that currently has a max practical capacity per shard of just below 1,000. Fixing or optimizing it to run with 2,000 players or even 10,000 players isn't going to solve this issue. We need an architectural design where there is no maximum, and that the hybrid itself can scale essentially infinitely with player count. Okay, so they need to do that. What's the problem? I'm not sure CIG understand this is a hard requirement for 1.0. They never mention anything to do with meshing or shard capacity in the entire "The Star's My Destination" panel. And they did refer to shards. They mentioned the shielding credits auction as being between all the shards, not just within your shard.
With shield coverage being limited, though, the system automatically selects the orgs with the highest bid from across all shards.
If they are genuinely expecting to still need shards into 1.0, this game is in big long-term trouble, and they'll need some kind of major change, of the kind they've just committed to not doing after 1.0, to fix the mess that will be created. Now, we're years away from the point where this mistake actually becomes unfixable yet, but now it's clearly visible on the horizon as a potential issue. It needs discussion. There are some potential mitigations. Geographic regions could be split into 2 or more sub-regions where that makes sense. If we were looking at a total of 3 US shards, for example, designated in one US West, another US Midwest, and a third US East would be a reasonable workaround. Of course, when 1.0 is released and waves of people come over to check out what Star Citizen 1.0 actually looks like, and the player count explodes, that's not a scalable solution. If there were a lot more shards needed initially before the delivery of some tech that would allow the shards to get much bigger, that would suggest doing something to make it easier to merge the shards back together later. Starting by making sure land claims are unique per region, so that no overlapping claims exist in another shard, would be a good start. This would mean shards could be merged, and where something conflicted with a base, it would at least be nothing of permanent value. That does still mean you could find your tranquil, quiet mountaintop retreat suddenly overlooks an industrial mining and refining facility one day, or your industrial centre now has a questionably legal transport base right next door, or your questionably legal transport base that was nicely hidden away is suddenly surprised by a highly active and dedicated bounty hunter group living right up against the side of it. But even with surprise neighbours as a potential downside, it still only works where you need a land claim in the first place, as that's the only way to block off land in other shards. In lawless space, where claiming land isn't even necessary,
and don't need to claim land in lawless Pyro,
there's nothing that can be done to stop 2 people building a base in the same physical space but in different shards. There's also the theoretical possibility that you could put the buildings up in all the shards simultaneously. But then how do you defend them in all the shards simultaneously? If they're taking damage in one shard, and you're in a different shard, what can you do about it? This also doesn't work. I really do hope we get to 1 shard per region before we get permanent player-built structures. Anyway, that's what I needed to say, that permanent player-constructed structures and many shards per region is an awful combination. And I guess we'll see based on how this does, if this is a one and done, or whether further videos will be made. So if you want to see more, hit the subscribe button, the like button, leave comments, yell at me, whatever.